So, Zephyr, this is a lawsuit that was initiated, if not on day one of the Trump presidency, pretty close. Tell us the history of...
Day three.
Day three.
Yes.
All right, well, and so tell us the history of this suit that was filed, and tell us who were your initial co-plaintiffs and who has since joined, which changes the quality of the suit.
Sure. Like many things that Donald Trump has done, this is a lawsuit that didn't have to happen. It shouldn't have had to happen. The moment he got elected, it was pretty clear that he was on a collision course with the Constitution, in particular, the foreign and domestic emoluments clauses of the Constitution. The foreign emoluments clause applies to any federal officer. It says that federal officers can't take benefits from foreign governments, presents, or emoluments, and without the consent of Congress. And the domestic emoluments clause applies specifically to the president and says that the president cannot get things of value from state governments or from the federal government. So, as you can see, these are both pretty strong anti-corruption provisions of the Constitution. They're also, I would note, provisions that past presidents have done everything they could to stay away from violating, because it sure doesn't look good when you're taking money from foreign governments or even taking money from one of the states when you're in a position to really influence those states' economies. So Crew, my client, I'm with a team of lawyers, including Larry Tribe and Erwin Chemerinsky and some fantastic Supreme Court litigators, Deepak Gupta, who has recently won Supreme Court cases. We represent Crew, the Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington. I know that is not an oxymoron. Right. That is a thing we can all hope for.
Indeed.
And as soon as Crew had been calling on then President-elect Trump to say, you've got to divest your business interests or you're going to be violating the Constitution. And instead of responding, what the president did, or instead of responding by doing the responsible thing, which is fully liquidating his assets, what the president did is, as you may recall, in the press conference right before he became president, held a press conference with a bunch of empty envelopes and a lawyer, and said, there's no problem here. My kids are going to run my business, not me, and we're going to donate profits from foreign diplomats staying at my hotels, so don't worry about it. There's so much that was weird about that press conference, but basically he effectively said, I'm going to keep taking money from foreign governments.
Right.
I'm not going to stop. And it's really important to note that we now know that President Trump has access to withdraw money from the Trump Organization at any time he wants. So this is, really money into his pocket. Just to briefly cover the ways in which he's violating the clause, and we certainly don't know all the ways. This is kind of a Rumsfeldian known knowns, known unknowns, and unknown unknown situation. But we know he's violating it with foreign diplomats staying in his hotels and agents of foreign governments. That's money in his pocket that's coming from countries all over the world. We know he's violating it by taking money from the government of China through, which is one of the biggest tenants in Trump Tower in New York City. He is violating it by getting all the benefits that come from foreign governments in his development projects all around the world. And so our initial client was Crew, because
let me stop you. Let me stop you right there before we get on to the initial client. What about when he travels to Mar-a-Lago so often? In other words, I mean, it has been traditional that the president goes to Camp David. I think there's been instances even when there are things like a West Coast White House. I think there was one that the Kennedy administration had, and the concept of there being sort of a place where presidents go, and obviously, President Obama would travel to this vacation spot or that vacation spot, and Secret Service goes there and this and that. But by going to Mar-a-Lago, what we've seen is that a huge amount of money has been paid from taxpayers into Donald Trump's business.
Right.
So it's sort of like a double dip. He's not just getting a paid vacation. He's actually making money off that vacation.
Yeah. No,
and
it's outrageous.
On top of that, he has now been able to leverage his attending there, and almost like, in the way that like Pete Rose would go to a convention to sign autographs, they've been able to double the cost of membership at Mar-a-Lago because he keeps going there and giving access to people.
No, it's a really, really important issue. And I guess what I would say is that everything outrageous that Donald Trump does is not a direct violation of the Emoluments Clause.
Okay.
But that does not mean that you shouldn't be really bothered by it.
I think it's concerning. I'm just curious if that falls into that because, as a domestic, as he is enriching himself through the office in some fashion. It violates a sort of core principle that I think we should all ascribe to, which is the emoluments clauses both have two purposes. One purpose is to say people should not be getting rich off of public office. That's pretty basic. Right. And the other is that public policy shouldn't be being made because of influence that those doing the enriching have. And so what you're talking about is a violation of the first principle that is behind the emoluments clauses. But again, not everything he's doing is actually a violation of these clauses. That doesn't mean he's not breaking any laws there. But we do have to be careful to say, here's the area where we see there's a very clear violation. And then there's a lot of areas where we should be talking to our representatives. I don't know that Trump himself is influenceable, but maybe Ivanka and Jared might be influenceable. I have less confidence in that respect. All right, but I just wanted to see if that fell into the emolument clause. So your the original client was Crew.
Yeah.
And so now under
Crew's
what basis?
Crew's a nonprofit. It's a watchdog group.
Right.
And so when there's a constitutional violation, that isn't enough to bring a case. You actually need to show that you are uniquely and concretely harmed, and that's what we call standing in law. Like, do you have standing to sue, not just is there a violation? So Crew has standing under a Second Circuit line of cases called the Havens Realty line of cases. That's for the lawyers out there. For the rest of you, you can just, keep Havens Realty in a little notebook. But basically what those cases recognize is that nonprofits that have to divert their resources substantially because of unconstitutional behavior are in a position to bring a lawsuit against that unconstitutional behavior.
Interesting.
Yeah,
but
we've had a lot of development since then. So.
Well, that's right. We're going to take a break here, and when we come back, we're going to hear about those new developments in this lawsuit, which basically erase that hurdle of standing, even though we have some legal precedent for a nonprofit. The question of standing has been materially strengthened, if I am not mistaken. You'll tell us more about that when we return. I'm Sam Seder. This is Ring of Fire Radio. We're talking to Zephyr Teachout. We'll be back in just a moment.